This is Brad with Campbell Security Screens, and today we're going to show you how to measure for and install our sliding glass door security screens system, both in a single door and a double door configuration.
I'm going to take you through the process of the different options on how to mount the screen and also how to measure and how we're going to install it. We're going to start off by removing the door. And we're going to go through the different options we have for installing the security screens on this particular door opening, which there's a couple different ways we can go. We can have either a single sliding screen door that would just replace the door that I just took off with a security screen, or we could have two doors that would be a security screen, and the security screen would actually protect the stationary glass panel from intruders coming in on the stationary side of the patio door opening. And this particular customer has requested that the two doors be on the door system, and we've decided to do it two doors on this opening, and we have two options here for mounting those doors. And so before you can really measure this, you have to determine what is it that you're going to do in terms of where the door is actually going to mount in the system. This happens to be what we call an aluminum surround system that encases the security doors, and you have two options of mounting this. You can mount the doors so they're on the inside of the opening, or this can be designed and mounted on the outside of the house. And you can drop it down to the patio level if it's on a patio slab like this is, or you can move this up and create a ledger underneath it. So the two options you have here is an inside mount or an outside mount. And the concern's always about a trip hazard. The trip hazard is, the distance that the tracks are above the existing tracks. So if you wanted to have a flush system, you could bring your door system down to where it's even with the threshold. This particular customer has requested that they're fine with this system where it's actually going to sit on top of the existing sill in the door opening. And by doing that, we still have to determine, what's the shortest dimension in this opening, and we need to know that height in three places, what's the shortest height distance. So we're going to measure on each end and plus the middle, and we're going to go with the shortest measurement. We're going to do the same thing for the width, and we're going to measure in three places: at the bottom, the middle, and at the top. So I'm going to walk you through the process of how we actually measure that for a very accurate measurement. And we're going to start with the height, and by loosening this knob on the AccuRule and then going all the way up to the top of the opening, and our measurement's going to be right here at the end of this extrusion. But we need this in three places so we can leave this set at that dimension. Now we're going to go over to the middle. And this is usually where it's the shorter dimension because the header of the door opening usually has a sag. And that's exactly what's the case here. So we'll readjust it. And there again, that's our measurement. Then we're going to go over here to the left side. And we can see that there's actually a gap. So our shortest dimension, which is what we want, is here in the middle. And our measurement is right at 80 inches. So that measurement is what we're going to record on our order form. We need to make sure when we build the door that it's actually going to fit into this opening. Although we measure it in three places, we found the shortest dimension in this opening, and it's going to be an inside mount system. We still don't know if that frame that's surrounding this is really square. So here again, another rule of thumb. Off of that net measurement that we have, we need to deduct a 1/4 inch off of the width, and we need to deduct a 1/4 inch off of the height, and that will give us some room to adjust the door frame into the opening. And that's the net size that we were talking about earlier that you want to give us, and that would be the size that we would actually manufacture this door, is to a net size. And when we talk about a net size, this is like a picture frame. And we're going to build that door. If you give us a dimension that's 95 inches wide, it's going to be 95 inches from one edge to 95 inches on the other, just like a picture frame. So this is the critical part in making sure you get this correct. Once we determine the height, the next thing we want to do is take the measurement in 3 places for the width of the door opening. So we're going to do the same process that we did before. We'll start at the bottom, take our measurement, we go to the middle. There's no change there. And then we go to the top. Now here we can see there's a little bit of a difference. So readjust for the top. And this happens to be 94 3/4 for the overall width. Once again, we want to make sure we record that. The other thing that we need to talk about and address, if this were a single door application for a security screen, we need to know what the width is of the door from the door jamb to the back edge of the stationary glass panel, where the glass actually starts on the stationary glass panel. Most door applications like this, the stationary door is usually always on the outside. If the stationary door is on the inside and your sliding glass door is on the outside, then you're going to need to mount your security screen on the inside of the house, because we need to be able to interlock our security doors so you can't lift them off the track from the outside or inside. And that's done using the stationary glass panel. What we do is we have an interlock system that on the back edge of the sliding door is this finish angle. What goes on the stationary door is this interlock piece. That's what ties this door into this opening so you can't lift it off. So now I'm going to show you how we're going to measure for the width of what we call the sash. Now we're going to go through the process of measuring for the sash width of the door, and this will be for like a single sliding security door on this particular opening. But I wanted to back up a little bit too to a good rule of thumb with all of our security products that we sell, primarily whether it's a sliding screen door or if it's a swinging screen door, the rule of thumb is we only overlap like an inside dimension by 1 inch on the outside on each side. So we add 2 inches to the overall width. And the reason we don't want to go much over 1 inch beyond the inside dimension is that not that it's a problem from the outside, but you always have to be aware that the handle for the sliding door in this case doesn't want to interfere, the thumb turn part interfere with the door opening itself and causing a problem by what we would call burying the thumb turn into the jamb. So the rule of thumb, you only want to go about 1 inch over the inside dimension on each side. Now going back to the single door application that we're talking about here, I just kind of taped this on here just to hold it in place. And the reason I'm using this is I want to get a measurement from where the door is actually going to be captured inside the receiver to the back edge of the stationary glass panel. And just by holding that in place, I'm going to measure from the inside of that receiver to the back edge of the stationary glass door. And if you can see this, it's very close to 48 inches. That's what we would call a net size sash width. We deal in net sizes. So you take your deductions and give us the net size, and that's what we will manufacture, is that size you give us as a net size. So in this case here, we're going to have a 48-inch wide sash. And when we build our door system, when it's manufactured, will come just to the edge of this door, so it's in line with the sliding glass door when the sliding glass door is closed. So it looks like it's all one unit. Now we're going to go on to one of the other critical parts of whether this is a sliding door system that we're working on now or if it's a swinging door system. The handle height is critical. What we did is we closed the glass door and it's all about the relationship of where that glass door falls and where the hardware is going to be on the sliding screen door. The rule of thumb on this is you go to the highest point from the bottom of your threshold area to the highest point of the handle of whatever that handle may be, and you add 4 inches. And that's the same theory we use even for swinging doors. You go to the highest point of the handle hardware and add 4 inches to it. And that moves the handle hardware up out of the way so there's no interference with the handle. On this case, we measured this, and we would record this on our form also. This happens to be 43.5 inches, and we're going to add 4 inches to that. And we'll go ahead and record that on our sheet as well. One of the things that you want to make sure of, that we're all talking the same language when we look at our door openings. We're always on the outside, we're always looking into the house when we talk about where the handle is. And in this case, we're outside looking in, the handle's going to be on the right. That's also on the form, and we also make notations that we're always on the outside looking in. We need to attach the interlock system that comes with the doors onto the stationary glass panel so that when the sliding security screen comes in contact with this, you can't get in and pull the door off, and it also seals for the bugs. So the dimension that we're looking for is what is the distance between the stationary glass door frame and the back edge of the door. In this case, it's 1 inch. So we got to build this out 1 inch. The interlock would mount onto this. So when we come back to install this, we would install this square tubing onto the stationary door, then we would fasten the interlock onto that square tubing, and that will be the interlock for the sliding security door. We're almost complete with measuring for this particular door opening, but there is a little bit of something you just need to be aware of. If we were overlapping and we're mounting this on the outside, there again we would only want to go over to the on the width side 1 inch on each side, so it would be a 2 inch from the inside dimension that we would add. And from the top, if you wanted to mount your door on the surface, you have your option. You can go 1 inch above. You could actually go higher. You could go 1.5 inches above, because we're not concerned about burying the thumb turn into the opening. So you have some variance at the top. You also have variance at the bottom. If you bring this down so that this is flush at the bottom, that's fine. If you wanted to go all the way to your patio slab, you could do that. Just realize that if you do come up, you have to have some type of support in the middle, using maybe an aluminum bracket or something that just gives that bottom channel some support underneath it. So there again, you can add 1.5 inches easily to the bottom, and you could add 1.5 inches to the top, so you'd have a 3-inch addition to your inside measurement that you came up with that would be the shortest dimension. If we were to install a single sliding security door on this particular door opening, and we were going to mount it on the outside surface of the stucco area here, we still have to address how are we going to interlock the door onto the stationary door glass panel. And to do that, one of the rectangle pieces that we have would fill this void, which we would mount this piece onto the stationary door, and then we would mount our interlock onto this, and in that way we could engage that interlock system to the door. So this is something you need to do at the time of your measuring so that you have this material when you come back out to install the door onto the opening, so that you don't have an additional trip to come back and fix it later. So just something you need to be aware of. It's always about how do I connect the interlock system to the stationary glass panel. It's a very critical point to any door that you're putting it on either on the surface mount or an inside mount, and when it's a single door. In a double door system that we have, the interlocks are already built in, and you'll see that when we install this particular door. Well, we're at the point of installing our door. We submitted our order forms, and this is what manufacturing produced, and we're ready to install this door into this opening. Once again, this is going to be an inside mount system, so it's going to be inside this door frame system. And what we're going to do is we're just going to do what we would call a dry fit, and with the help of Luis here, we're going to put it into the opening. Ready? And all is well. The reason we said on your measurements for your width and your height, where we deduct 1/4 inch, we have to make sure that it's square so the door's closed properly, but the opening itself may not be square. So what we're going to do, we got a dry fit going on here, and I'm going to use a carpenter square, and I'm going to just square the right-hand corner here to make sure that the aluminum frame square, because even though this is in a very sound system, it still has a tendency to rack. So we want to make sure that that door frame system is square. So if that's square, you can see as you look along the jamb, because of the irregularities of the door frame in the wall, that I'm tight on the bottom, and I have a little bit of a gap at the top. I have a larger gap in the middle. And this will always be a variance no matter what opening you're working on. The jamb might even come in like this, or it may be out an inch or more. And if that's the case, you just have to shim accordingly. So what we have is wooden shims that we'll put in place right where we're going to put fasteners in to start with. So we're going to fill those voids, and I'm going to recheck it to make sure we're still square. And I can go to the inside now of our track and jamb, and we're good right there. So the next step in this process is I'm going to put one screw in, and I'm going to tag it in place to make sure that's exactly where we want to put it. Now we're going to start up here at the top. I'm going to drill a pilot hole here, and this is where we're going to have one of our first screws go in. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go in on an angle. I have very long screws to get back into the wall. Okay, so now we have our hole. Now I'm going to put the screw. So I'm going to use this longer screw. These are torque head bits. Just want to verify that my frame is still square. That's perfect. Okay, so we have our first screw in, and now we're going to do a test fit to see how the door closes. We put our first screw in up at the top of the door, and so now we're ready to, and we made sure it was square, and now we're ready to tag the bottom in place. But you just have to be aware in this particular opening here, we have from the extrusion of the door frame to the surround frame is 3/4 of an inch up here at the top. We want to make sure that we transfer that same distance all the way down to the bottom. So this just happens to be a piece of 3/4 inch wood that I'm going to use just to hold it in place so that when I drill through here that the door frame doesn't actually move in the opening. And we're very tight against the bottom here, so there's no shim in behind this point where we're going to attach it. So we're going to attach this the same way we did up above. And what we're doing is when we drill, I'm drilling on the very inside edge of this channel. And then I take the drill and I'm literally drilling in on an angle because I want to go right into the stud in the wall. So I don't want to go too far to the outside because otherwise I'd just be attaching this to the stucco. looks like we're good. And now we'll check the door for closing. Well, we've installed our screws at the top and the bottom, and we're checking for plumb with the door into the opening, make sure we've eliminated any gaps that we had in here between the aluminum surround frame and the outside wall here. And we use the door to use as an alignment tool. And we just want to make sure that the gap at the top of the door and the bottom of the door are very even so that it closes properly. So now we have this shimmed in place. We did the same thing. We put shims over on the left side of the door. And now we're going to repeat the same process we did over on the right side on the left side. So we're going to fasten at the top and the bottom. And then what we're going to end up doing is going about every 10-12 inches and fastening it back into the wall from the top to the bottom on the sides. And we're going to do the same thing at the top. We're going to fasten about every 10 to 12 inches at the top. And then we're going to fasten the track system onto the sill, and we're going to use some screws that will go through the masonry because there's actually concrete underneath that. So the next step we're going to do would be fasten the left side off, we'll fasten the top, and then we're going to fasten the sill. We've installed our screws, fastening the door system onto the door opening. It's fastened on the sides, the top, and the bottom, and we're ready now just to make sure everything still works properly. And one of the real key elements, and we talked about it before in the measuring process, we always want to make sure that we're measuring this handle height for the handle height. Although on this particular door opening, this may seem like the handle's very high, that's something you just have to kind of get over because it's more important to make sure that this thumb turn misses any hardware on the inside of the home. So you want to double check and make sure that you did that properly before you go off of the job site. But in this case, everything works fine. And the only time you would ever have a problem with this handle being too high is if there were some people that required it to be lower, which if you wanted it to be lower, then you'd go 4 inches below that handle. But you could see dropping this 4 inches below this handle puts it very low in the opening. And now there's a lot of popularity with 8-foot tall doors. So this handle height isn't out of the realm of being too high. It's just the nature of making sure that we bypass that hardware. So we're done with the door. We make sure that it latches properly, which this is all latching properly. And the only thing that we need to do now, if there's any light leaks, is what we would call them from the inside looking out, then we would just want to take some silicone and just silicone in behind and seal any gaps that might exist on the opening. And this here, because it's the aluminum surround system, there's virtually no light gaps to deal with. So we're done with this job other than taking off the protective finish that comes on the pieces and the protective film and tape.
For surface mount screens, there's a flange that goes around the entire perimeter of the framing, and you'll put the screws through that flange into the studs. Once completed, you'll snap the covers on to complete the installation. That concludes our tutorial for Campbell Security Screen's sliding screen door system. Thanks so much for watching.